They already started, so let's go ahead and let's not waste no more time. Let's go ahead and get straight into it.
Hey, I'm Kevin, and I lead product at OpenAI.
Hi, I'm Michelle, and I'm a post-training research lead here at OpenAI.
Hi, I'm Ishan, and I also work on post-training.
All right, today we're excited to announce GPT 4.1, which is a family of models in the API that were trained just for developers. And it's 3 models. So it's GPT 4.1, GPT 4.1 Mini, and for the first time, GPT 4.1 Nano, which is our smallest, fastest, and cheapest model ever. Now, these models are better than GPT-4o on just about every dimension. They even meet or beat GPT 4.5 in a bunch of key ways. And for the first time, they have long context. So all 3 models, even the Nano model, can handle up to 1 million tokens of context. We've also got some fun pricing stuff to talk about, but we'll save that for later.
And actually, the decision to name these 4.1 was intentional.
I mean, it's not just that we're bad at naming.
It's not just that.
It's also that. But these models are better across the
Right. So they named a few different ones already. Hold on. So they named
Michelle,
4.1
and I'm a post-training
and then like the mini.
research lead here at OpenAI.
Hi, I'm Ishan, and I also work on post-training.
All right, today we're excited to announce GPT 4.1, which is a family of models in the API that were trained just for developers. And it's 3 models. So it's GPT 4.1, GPT 4.1 Mini, and for the first time, GPT 4.1 Nano, which is our smallest, fastest, and cheapest model ever. Now, these models are better than GPT-4o on just about every dimension. They even meet or beat GPT 4.5 in a bunch of key ways. And for the first time, they have long context. So all 3 models, even the Nano model, can handle up to 1 million tokens of context. We've also got some fun pricing stuff to talk about, but we'll save that for later.
And actually, the decision to name these 4.1 was intentional.
I mean, it's not just that we're bad at naming.
It's not just that.
It's also that. But these models are better across the board. They're great at coding. They're great at complex instruction following. They're fantastic for building agents. So let's dive in. Let's talk evals. Let's do demos. You want to take us away?
Yeah, let's get started with a little look at kind of the intelligence by latency curves here. And the the 4.1 series actually improves a lot from 4.0. So you can see 4.0 and Mini in here are in green, and then 4.1.
Wait a second. This is the Quasar. Isn't that hinting? Hold on. I'm letting them speak.
We have these 3 new models that kind of move that frontier upward because they're much more intelligent. You also can see that we have Nano as a new entrant in this area, and it's much faster, but also, really holds its weight on intelligence. So that's kind of the rough shape of the models. And, when deciding when to use them, we recommend starting with 4.1, and it's our kind of powerhouse for these 3 dimensions: coding, instruction following, and long context. But if you need something a little faster, for maybe a slightly simpler use case, I'd recommend 4.1 Mini. And then finally, Nano is just an absolute workhorse for tons of applications like autocomplete or classification or extracting stuff from long documents. So that's kind of when you should use each model. But let's get into coding first. So developers care a lot about coding, and we've been improving our model's ability to write functional code. And so what does that mean? We've been working on making it follow diff formats better, explore repos, write unit tests, and write code that compiles. And actually, SweBench is a really great eval for evaluating this sort of performance. The model is dropped into a Python repo. It's given a task. It's got to explore, write some code, write some tests. And we see that GPT 4.1 is a significant improvement over our past models. It reaches 55% accuracy, up from 33% from our previous GPT 4.0 model. And we think this is pretty impressive for a non-reasoning model. It even beats O1 and O3 Mini. But SweBench is all Python. And we've also improved this model's ability to code in other languages. And Aider Polyglot is a great benchmark for that specifically. It's got a bunch of languages. But also what's cool is that it's got a whole and diff format. So sometimes developers want the model to rewrite the entire file, but sometimes you want it to produce diffs. And that's useful when you want a faster application. You save latency on the tokens that are not changed.
Also save money, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so here you can see that we've really closed the gap on whole and diff performance. We've also doubled GPT 4.1's diff performance from 4.0. You can also see that Mini is a really significant improvement over GPT 4.0 Mini. So we think both of these models will be a great model for any kind of coding tasks. So those are coding benchmarks. But there's also kind of the intangibles of when you're using a model. When you're creating a front end, is it functional? Is it beautiful? Does it nail the mark? And so for that, we have a little example of a flashcard app I've been making.
You're learning Hindi.
Yeah, working on it. And so I've got a prompt here. It's pretty complicated. I'm asking for this app pretty specifically. I want a nice 3D animation when you click on the flashcard. And so when I give this prompt to GPT 4.0, this is what I get. It follows some of the instructions, and some of the app is functional. But we really trained GPT 4.1 to do better. And that model, you can see it looks way better. It's discovered colors. It can also do the 3D animation. So we think you're really going to like this improvement to front-end coding.
And this was just based on that prompt that you gave it?
Just one prompt, and you get back an entire working application. It's pretty cool. But we've also been working on instruction following. So can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so just like coding, we have made the model way better at instruction following. It now strictly follows all the instructions that you provided. So using all the feedback that we received, we created this internal instruction following eval, where it mimics how an API developer uses our model. So each sample in the eval contains a complex set of instructions, where each instruction belongs to one of several categories, like formatting, ranking, ordered instructions, overconfidence, and so on. And collectively, that sample is given a difficulty rating from like easy, medium, and hard. And we see that this model does really well across all those axes and on difficulty levels as well. So here you can see the hard subset eval results, and this model is so much better than the previous 4.0 model.
So what's an example of like a really hard set of instructions to follow?
Yeah, so let's say you're building a trip planning application, and you give it instructions like make sure you receive all the info from the user before answering them. And when you answer with the trip itinerary, make sure it's in a table format. It contains 5 rows, 3 columns. The columns are formatted in a certain way.
Yeah, I don't know about you all. I remember all the times that you learn these tricks in prompting where you're like, no, you really need to make this a table, not a list. Trust me, my boss is going to be super mad at me if you don't get this right. Yeah, so hopefully no more of that.
Yeah, and people actually were doing that just so that they could get the model to follow an instruction. None of that is needed now. The model follows all your instructions to the T, and it does really well. We also have a new prompting guide now that we'll publish on how to get the best out of our models.
Awesome.
And not just internal evals, even on external benchmarks like Scale's multi-challenge eval that tests models' instruction following capabilities on multiple turns, our model does really well. So for example, you might have an instruction 3 turns ago, and it tests whether the model remembers that instructions and continues to follow it. So it also tests models' coherence and memory. These improvements also scale well on long context data too. So you could give it large corpus of data, and the behavior that you're trying to extract from the model, it'll continue to follow that.
Nice. Yeah, speaking of large corpuses, GPT 4.1, Mini, and Nano are our first models to have 1 million of tokens in as the context. This is up from 128K for our past models, so it's an 8x improvement, which is pretty big. But it's not enough to just have the context. You want the model to be able to use it effectively. And so for that, we're showing this eval we created, which is a needle in a haystack. We insert some kind of text into a large corpus, and we ask the model to find it. And we see that the model can find it across any depth, so maybe at the beginning, the middle, or the end of the document, and also across the entire full length of the context up to 1 million.
This is a very boring looking graph, but it's boring in a great way because it says every square is actually working.
Yeah, it's actually boring through so much work, which is so cool. Normally you would expect to see some of these be red, like the long context doesn't hold up to a certain area. But the fact that all of these is blue means that the model can find what you're looking for.
And this is for all 3 models?
All 3 models, even Nano. So this is not, the end-all be-all of long context. It's nice to find a detractor in a long document, but that's not exactly what all our developers are doing. So we've also created an eval called OpenAI MRCR. And this is a kind of more challenging way of determining how well the model does on long context. So you can see that GPT 4.1 in blue exceeds GPT-4o in green significantly, up to 128K tokens. And it holds up quite well all the way up to 1 million tokens.
This eval is actually really complex. Can you explain it a little bit more about how it works?
Yeah, it's pretty complicated. So we basically create these synthetic conversations where there's a user and an assistant talking back and forth. And the user is asking for things like, give me a poem about tapirs, and then give me a poem about frogs, and then maybe give me a short story about tapirs. And then we ask the model, find me the second short story about tapirs. And so you can find it's pretty complicated. You have to not get confused by the poems and the frogs and find the second and not the first one. So we're really excited about this improvement in performance, but you can see that there's still some work to do here. And so as part of that, we're publishing this eval on Hugging Face today, OpenAI MRCR, and we really want to spur on more work in the kind of more difficult long context processing area. Yeah, and then more on multimodal long context. So sometimes you're not just using text, but you also want to upload a video. And we found that on the video MME benchmark, GPT 4.1 reaches state-of-the-art performance, achieving 72%. So this benchmark is pretty cool. You upload like a 30 to 60 minute video without subtitles, and the model is asked multiple choice questions. So GPT 4.1 is much better at understanding this sorts of thing. All right, then one last hit on evals, a lot of plots, I know. On multimodal processing in general, these models are a really significant improvement, but the real story is GPT 4.1 mini. This model, you can see it really punches above its weight on multimodal reasoning and intelligence, and we think this is probably the top model to be used if you're doing any sort of multimodal or image processing.
Okay. Amazing benchmarks, but let's see some demos.
Let's do it. So here we have the OpenAI Playground, which is a really nice UI to iterate on OpenAI's APIs. I've pre-selected the latest 4.1 model. And in the system message, I've given it a light identity. The identity is it needs to produce a single Python file code application with very limited setup required. I also told it that it has access to the latest 4.1 model, which can handle up to 1 million tokens of input and 32K output. So on the right, we mimic a user query. So the user is asking to make a website that can take a large text file and answer questions about it. We give it very limited style guidance, and we tell it to use OpenAI's responses APIs to answer questions about the doc. So let's see it in action.
So you're having, as part of the demo, you're having it create a website, and then you'll use that website for the rest of the demo.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So now it's producing like multiple hundreds of lines of code. I've rerun this query before, and I've copied the code that it spits out into this app.py file. So you can see it's a multiple 100-line file. You see that the HTML has been inlined in this file. If you keep scrolling, you would see there's an upload code, the code to ask questions. It's going to hit the responses API.
So the model did this just in one shot?
Yeah, it's doing that right now as you're seeing it. Yeah, let's produce the code. It tells you how to spin it up.
Cool.
Yeah. Should we take it for a spin?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Cool. OK. So let's try.
Nice.
What do you think?
That looks pretty cool. It's a little BDB sassy, but I think it's working.
I do like that it advertises itself there at the bottom, powered by GPT 4.1.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. Just based on the limited guidance that we gave it, it produced this website. So to test the log file that I'm about to upload, that file is NASA's server request response log file from 1995 August. Let me show you that file.
You just have this file lying around?
Yeah, that's. You don't?
I prefer the 94.
Oh.
The 94 is a great version.
That's a good one, yeah. So in this log file, you can see the client name in the left that made the request to NASA's servers. You see the timestamp, the resource that was accessed, and the HTTP response code. This is a long file that contains a lot of log lines. And you can see on the left that this is about 450,000 tokens of content here.
Nice. So you just couldn't use this with our past models?
Yeah, this wasn't possible. So let's try uploading this file. Now what I've done is I've snuck in a line that is not actually an HTTP request response. Let's see if it can find it.
Very sneaky of you.
Okay, so it's a little needle in a haystack, except in this
Yeah.
case, you don't even tell it what the needle looks like. It's just figure out what's different and tell me.
Exactly. So it's going to sift through the whole file, do some pattern matching to see how all the log lines look like, and then try to see if there's one that does not look like the others.
Nice. And I really like this thinking spinner. So this is just the front end that we created in the demo right before this one.
Exactly. It's like a nice actively going spinner. And all the front-end improvements also are showing up here, even in this like very limited single-page Python application that we asked it to write. It doesn't have access to like other additional files that it could spit out for styling or anything like that. So
totally. Yeah, I think this front end is definitely significantly better than one I can make. So it meets my bar for sure.
yeah, and this spinning thing is kind of neat.
Definitely taken a sec, but I think we're almost there. Any minute now.
It makes sense. It is a
Come on,
large
4.1.
file.
Live demos are awesome.
That's a large file, so it makes sense if you're trying to compare stuff.
Okay.
We made it.
Okay, there is a line that it has spit out that does not look like an HTTP request line to me.
It does not.
Okay. Let's see if this line is indeed in the log file that we uploaded. I'm going to copy this keyword.
Nice.
Yeah.
There it is.
Great. So it was able to find this line that has been snuck into this deep 450,000 token log file that is like very hard to find. So it did pretty well.
Nice job, GPT 4.1.
Let's look at another demo.
Awesome.
Okay. So here we are going to riff on the previous demo that we saw, but this one is going to be more focused on how an API developer prompts our model. So I've again selected the 4.1 model here. And here the application's personality is of a log analyst assistant. We tell it how the input data will be structured. So we tell it will be within these log data tags, and how the user's query would be structured. So that would be in the query tag. And then we have a set of rules. So these are kind of the instructions that an API developer would provide to the model. So they are saying that only answer questions about the content within log data. The question should always be formatted within the query tags. If any of those things are not true, please respond with an error message. The response should be in an XML format, and I've given it some very light guidance on how the XML format should look like. So it should have some tags like result, final answer, references, and so on.
Nice. Yeah, this looks a lot like the system messages we find developers use often. You know, they're pretty meaty.
Yeah. And I've preloaded the log file here. So this is the trimmed version of the same log file we saw earlier. Cool. So I first made a request saying how many requests were made by fnal.gov, and it rejected it because it was not formatted within the query tags. Now I'm going to make the same request within query tags and see how it does. Okay, now it was able to find the two references that are within the log file. So this is the kind of interaction we see quite a bit with 4.0, where users want a certain behavior, and especially certain behavior not to happen, and the model sometimes misses on it. So I have an example. I made the same query to 4.0, and it answered the question instead of saying that it needs to be wrapped in query tags.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
That's a key detail we hear a lot from developers. You really want it to follow negative instructions and do exactly as specified.
Exactly, yeah.
Super cool.
Awesome. So great results on benchmarks. That was an awesome set of live demos. I know a big amount of work has gone into just making sure that this model is really good at the kind of day-to-day tasks that developers face. And you and your team have put a ton of time into that, so maybe talk a bit about it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's not an accident that developers in the real world love using these models. To that end, we kind of went with a data sharing program last year where developers can opt in to share their traffic with us in exchange for free credits. And so when that traffic comes in, we'll scrub it for PII, remove any identifying details, and then use that to improve our models. And actually, one of the key things we do with that is creating evals. And so the evals help us tell, like, when we're creating a new model, are we on the right track? Are developers going to like this? And so the eval Sean mentioned at the top, instruction following, was directly inspired by this. And so first, I want to say thank you to all of the developers who opted in. Thanks to you opting in, we've been able to make a much better model. And then what I'll say for developers who haven't yet, if you want the models to get better for you with no work on your part, I'd recommend opting in.
Yeah, it really does help us build great models for you. Now, we said we also would come back and talk pricing. Our mission is to ensure that AGI benefits all of humanity. And one of the things that we've learned over and over is that the more cost effectively we can offer our models, the more use cases you're able to build, the more that you're able to use AI to help people all over the world. And so in
Nano?
particular, GPT 4.1, with all of the improvements that Michelle and Ishan have been talking about, is going to be 26% cheaper than GPT 4.0. And GPT 4.1 Nano is our smallest, fastest, cheapest model ever at just 12 cents blended per million tokens. And going beyond what any of our competitors offer, there is no pricing bump for long context. So when you use our long context models, you're just paying for your tokens the same way that you pay for a non-long context request. Now, one bit of a fun police update here. We know GPUs are at a premium. We want to make sure that we can get GPT 4.1 out as broadly as possible to all of you. And we've just been talking about how 4.1 beats even 4.5 on a lot of key benchmarks. So we're announcing that we're going to be deprecating GPT 4.5 in the API.
What?
Not today.
Oh, in API.
It'll happen over the course of the next 3 months or so, but we really do need those GPUs back.
Yeah, we're really excited to get some back for research, so thank you.
Yeah, and I know we all love GPT 4.5. A lot of the improvements that we've made are going to continue on in this model and in other models, so it has been a very successful experiment. Now, we have one more surprise for you. I'm really excited to invite Varun, who's the founder and CEO of Windsurf, which is one of the premier agentic coding IDEs out in the market. Varun and his team have been early testers of GPT 4.1, and excited to hear from you directly. How's it been?
Yeah, we got access to GPT 4.1. We were super excited to sort of test it out, and we were very surprised with the performance. We have internal benchmarks that are very similar to what a SWE bench looks like that validates end-to-end software performance, and we found that it was a 60% improvement over GPT 4.0, which is a massive bump. But internal benchmarks only tell a part of the story, right? For our users, what matters more than just getting to a solution, it's actually the smoothness, the interactivity when you're vibe coding an app or modifying an app. And what we actually found was GPT 4.1 has substantially fewer cases of degenerate behavior. And maybe a couple examples here, we found that GPT 4.1 reduces kind of the number of times that it needs to read unnecessary files by 40% compared to the other leading models. And also, it modifies unnecessary files 70% less than the other leading models. To top it all off, the model is also surprisingly less verbose. Right? These models sometimes tend to blabber a lot, and GPT 4.1 is 50% less verbose than the other leading models as well. For all these reasons, we've been super excited about the performance. We decided to actually go out and provide GPT 4.1 for free for all of our free and paid users for the week, and also heavily discount the product immediately afterwards.
So just to recap, in Windsurf, GPT 4.1 will be free, totally free for the next 7 days, and then going forward will be heavily discounted for a while.
That's exactly right.
Awesome.
Amazing.
I will say this weekend, my 8-year-old decided he wanted to start selling Legos. And so we opened up Windsurf, opened GPT 4.1, and we vibe coded a Lego website for his upcoming business. And it worked great. So,
Nice. You'll have to send that over.
Yeah, we'll post it with the live stream. I'm sure everybody is excited about it. But thanks so much for joining us. We're super excited to see what people build in Windsurf and in beyond. So that's today. We have a family of 3 models, GPT 4.1, GPT 4.1 Mini, and GPT 4.1 Nano, that are our smartest, fastest, cheapest models that we have ever built, just in the API for developers. By the way, you can also fine-tune GPT 4.1 and 4.1 Mini starting today, and Nano will be available to fine-tune in the near future. I want to say a huge thank you to Michelle, to Ishan, and to their whole teams. These models are fantastic. We're super excited to see what you all build. So that's it for today. These models are available now. They're in the API. Please start using them. We can't wait to see what you build, and we look forward to hearing your feedback. Thank you so much.
Jeez, that was actually a lot of information, like a lot of information. first I really want to hit on is the quasar. Like, let's be real. She dropped that gem and then like she just kind of kept it moving. I didn't like that. Like, I was really slick. That was really slick, but it was really good though. She dropped that quasar hint in the beginning, and that quasar hint was pretty juicy. Let's see. Let's see. It was pretty far back. It was like at the beginning. So if y'all missed that,
model ever dimension. Even
yeah, did
but follow
by latency.
take us away.
I think she had said it early on. Like I think they had passed it to her, and she was like, "This quasar."
Yeah,
let's check it out.
Let's get started with a little look at kind of the intelligence by latency curves here, and the quasar.
See? Y'all see that? This quasar. Hold on. Let's go back. I'm on Twitter right now. Twitter can be a wild place, so I'm gonna look it up. I'm looking up on my phone really quick before I pull it up online. Quasar Alpha. Yeah.
Sorry, the 4.1 series.
You and they even laughed at it. Hold on. This quasar. That's pretty. That was a nice little. That's a nice little chef's kiss, if you ask me. But she was talking about the quasar that was doing amazing results online, and they were speculating that it was OpenAI. I think on Twitter it was a potential new OpenAI model. Quasar Alpha has appeared on OpenRouter. 1 million context, right? Pretty good at coding and incredibly fast. Maybe tests for open source models they want to release. This model, she just said the Quasar, right? 4.1 has 1 million token context. They just confirmed that. 32,000 token output, but they confirmed pretty much that this is the quasar that everybody was going crazy over. It made rumors in the rounds earlier last week about it, and they even said that people, even in the meta team, that's why they kind of released early, was because OpenAI was going to come out with something huge coming up next week. That's why they moved up their release date so early, is to get ahead of OpenAI, which is kind of funny because OpenAI didn't release this until this week, this Monday, because what happened was they saw a change in the log where Llama 4 had an update as far as the release date. It was a diff file, and that was pretty interesting. I think that we just got confirmation that this is the quasar everybody was talking about. I'm gonna pull my Twitter up really quick, and we can talk more about it because Twitter can get kind of Twitter, if you know what I mean. But while I pull that up, I did want to talk to y'all more about this being a 1 million token context window, which is absolutely crazy. First off, that's novels. That's like a lot. That could be books or a book at the very least. That's a pretty big deal that like it is able to take in that much information because Llama, if I'm not mistaken, Llama was just able to do 1 million context, and they were basically saying like infinite, unlimited amount at some point that they're going to be able to do because of how big the context window is. But of course, lo and behold, they already have their own models they're coming out with, right? Let me see this. Quasar, Open Router. Let me see if I can find some stuff. This is, let's see if I pull this over. So you see here, where it has the box right here, that was able to spin. Of course, this is a classic example. A lot of people already have this and already do this in other AIs, but Quasar was really good. You see the dates like April 10th, April 3rd, you see in some of these posts because it came out earlier, like last week or earlier this month, about how good Quasar was doing. And we see that it was able to do this. And it was right, prompt was write a Python program that simulates realistic bouncing balls and other objects affected by gravity inside Where are we off at? Inside of a square. Optimus Alpha left, Quasar Alpha right. Oh, they came out with two models? Optimus is course and fantastic and coding pretty good. It could have been just the high-low mini. I mean the Quasar GPT 4.1 as well as Mini and the Nano, and so they're comparing them against each other potentially. Quasar and Alpha. So it's funny how they even like brought it out. I want to scroll down quick. It can get crazy out here on Twitter. If you know, you know. Uh, yeah. So this is Optimus Alpha has topped the charts. The community created dozens of benchmarks with Quasar and Optimus over the last week's highlights are these. So it looks like it's doing really good. I want to bring this back over here really quick so I can curate what we're seeing. I don't want nothing to pop up at us. But yeah, basically we just got confirmation, like wink, wink, and it could also not be this one. It could be other models that people are talking about. What if this is not even Quasar, right? The one that everybody's going crazy over. What if it's just one of the other models that they just had in the tuck? Because what seems like is happening is that OpenAI is not only showing us models, but they have stuff like tucked away for like a rainy day. They have like a rainy day AI fund. Even the fact that they just got rid of ChatGPT 4.5 is kind of interesting because it seemed like they may have just had like they see when they dropped 4.5. I'm not even sure if was Sam Altman even there in the in the live stream. I mean, he's not here in the 4.1 live stream, granted, but it's interesting to see that he wasn't there and he wasn't there for 4.5. Uh, and why are we getting rid of 4.5 and getting 4.1? I wonder why it's not like a 4.6 or something or a 4.7, but we're going backwards. Who knows? Who knows? But 4.5 is very resource intensive. I think when you look at the leaderboards as far as how much it takes in as a token, it's like we see a lot of AI models taking, couple cents, dimes, pennies here and there. Man, GPT 4.5 was taken in dollars, fam. GPT was taken in like Happy Meals, freaking Chick-fil-A combos. It was absolutely insane how much like money you had to spend on this thing to make it actually good. But I don't think that's a necessarily a bad thing that they had to do this. But we did get confirmation on Quasar that they know about Quasar and that it may be Quasar. Who knows? Because we do know from previous training of 4.5. They talked about a training video on 4.5 that they have other models that they will be releasing as we see now here 4.1, and that it's things that they've been training on for years. So when it comes to like Grok 3 and like DeepSeek and stuff, I think what they're doing is they're only putting out enough to compete and stay ahead, but they're not emptying the clip, so to speak, right? So if they're not emptying the clip, then what I mean by that is if Grok 3 comes out with something, Gemini 2.5 Pro comes out with something, DeepSeek comes out with something, Mistral or whatever AI, they do have some AIs that's been training, been cooking for a while that they can just put out there to compete to stay ahead of the curve, but they're not just trying to release everything because we've seen at least allegations, right? We've seen allegations that other AI models about DeepSeek, and it's not confirmed or anything, but we've seen like other AI models may have potentially used some of OpenAI's ChatGPT's information to have their own information based off of it. And they were saying that basically we like one of the things that they talked about here was having a chat GPT have strict coherence to instructions and how the information needs to be input and what can and cannot be outputted. Let's go for example with what they said. Let's go at the end. I think they were talking about that was the benchmarks. they're talking about the strings, right? I know it could have been kind of confusing.
Find this line hard to. Let's look at. This one is going to be more focused.
So they're talking about the query here, right? Where they would ask a question, but the question could not be given, right? They couldn't give an answer or response. At least the AI couldn't, unless it was wrapped in the query kind of tags, basically.
On how an API developer prompts our model. So I've again selected the 4.1 model here. And here, the application's personality is of a log analyst assistant. We tell it how the input data will be structured. So we tell it will be within these log data.
It's in the you're in a log analyst assistant. The user will prompt, so it has to be wrapped in like these tags, like log data, whatever.
Tags, and how the user's query would be structured. So
the queries are structured, like you see right there, where his cursor's at, the query tags, and then you have to ask your question inside the query tags.
that would be in the query tag. And then we have a set of rules. So these are kind of the instructions that an API developer would provide to the model. So they are saying that only answer questions about the content within log data. The question should always be formatted within the query tags. If any of those things are not true, please respond with an error message. The response should be in an XML format, and I've given it some very light guidance on how the XML format should look like. So it should have some tags like result, final answer, references, and so on.
Nice. Yeah, this looks a lot like the system messages we find developers use often. You know, they're pretty meaty.
Yeah. And I've preloaded the log file here. So this is the trimmed version of the same log file we saw earlier. Cool. So
let's see if he asks the question. Well, we can skip through it, but basically what I'm trying to say here, right? What I'm basically saying here is that I was going backwards the whole time. Basically, what I'm saying here is with DeepSeek, right? The allegations, the rumors in the AI rumor mill was that DeepSeek was able to kind of like prompt hack GPT to get information, to get how it was thinking out of ChatGPT, so that it could then use this information that was outputted for their own personal use. That was the rumor, the word around town. I'm not saying it's true or not. I'm just saying that's the word around town. But what's good about 4.1 with the strict coherence to how somebody is prompting and telling you how to prompt and telling you what to do and what not to do, like how they do in this query tag, you can protect even ChatGPT against giving out sensitive information to users.
the response tags
Message.
preloaded. Cool. Now I'm going to make the same request within query tags. Saying how preloaded.
Find developers use often. You know, they're pretty meaty.
Listen,
Yeah. Earlier. Cool. So I first made a request.
see right here it says he made a request. He typed in the box, people. I know sometimes like these developers be talking in. I'm a developer, so I'm like talking about my own people, but I know a lot of these developers be talking in like language that's hard to understand. So why you have VAs? I'm not going on that tangent. He first put in the text box like how many times was a request made by fnl.gov, and it did not give him an answer. It says the query needs to be within the query tags.
Saying how many requests were made by fnal.gov, and it rejected it because it was not formatted within the query tags.
See, now imagine if they had this for like the previous versions of ChatGPT. So that rumor could have been shut down or at least mitigated to be like, well, don't y'all have protections against ChatGPT to even give out information that's not in this format or this, that, and the third, right? Now they have that. Within this one, they have now the ability for them to not be able to do this, which is pretty cool. And now that, that's a huge deal, not just from a output perspective and a structure input, structure output perspective, but it's also cool in a security perspective. Think about it. What if like you don't even know like what if instead of the query needs to be within a query tags, what if you tell like AI like, hey, this needs like it's not in the correct format. Just not in the correct format. So if it's not in the correct format, you would need to then format this could be something else, right? So let's say this. Let's give a scenario. What if you need to have the input in parentheses, but you don't put in the error message that it needs to be in parentheses? On a security side, only the users who are using this API or restricted API know the format to use to make a proper request. That's an extra layer of security on top of it being like, some type of secure network or only some type of authentication. But on top of that, it needs to be in a proper format. It needs to be in some type of 540 even answer. I think that's kind of a big deal, at least in my mind. Maybe I'm blowing this out of proportion, but I think that's a big deal. But I think this is pretty interesting, especially with the structured input, structured outputs as well, because that also helps with coding. Because if people are like giving you all kinds of different inputs and you're not like expecting it, if you're some type of data analyst or data analysis, you're gonna be like, what the heck did they put in here? Right? So you went from Quasar, right? So we just talked about Quasar, this potentially being the Quasar that was doing numbers and rounds, and now they're pretty much releasing it, wink wink, nod nod or whatever. Now we talked about the security aspect from having it being strictly free tags or whatever format you have, like I was saying with parentheses. This is not also important as far as having AI listen to you and really like give you the outputs that you want to have. Because there was a article maybe like a month or two, probably like 3 months ago at this point, talking about the security aspects of ChatGPT, where ChatGPT, it wasn't like it was unsecure, but ChatGPT would kind of do whatever ChatGPT wanted to do. It could receive an input by like a user like me or you, but it would then also sometimes do whatever it wanted to do. It would take in your input and then not listen to you. It would go rogue. It was almost like ChatGPT was sentient because it will listen to you, and at sometimes it won't even do what you want to do, and sometimes it would listen to your response, wait for you to be idle at some point or another, and then it would do something totally different than what you had previously asked it to do, and it would do it in its own like downtime. So I think this is like really good for that, because that kind of eliminates some of the risks and fears there because it's basically having ChatGPT and these AIs really strictly do what you want to do. It's more control over how you want it to output. There's even talking about how sometimes you would have to freaking gaslight ChatGPT to get what you wanted it to get because sometimes it'll just give you an output that was, well, not what you wanted. It'll give you something totally different as far as like the formats. If you want a table formatted in JSON, maybe it'll give you some other type of format. Maybe it'll give you some type of CSV format instead of a JSON format. And that does matter. And you had to like say, oh, my boss would like kill me if they ever found out I did it. I can't turn my paper in like this. It was the rules. It was the instructions. Please, ChatGPT. And now you don't have to do that. But that also kind of goes towards the rogue nature of how ChatGPT was kind of doing whatever it wanted to do. And if you think about it, we've been having ChatGPT for some years now. If you really want to think about it, we've been having ChatGPT for some years now. So what is the result from all the rogue nature? I know it's like a lot of probably just small issues that happened and it was nothing big, but who knows? Like we don't know who's all running this. We don't know who's all like doing this type of stuff. It could have been a bigger issue than what we think when it comes to that. Let's talk about the million token context window that they also were talking about, which was I thought was impressive. I thought it was pretty impressive. They put in like a NASA log file August 95. That was ridiculous. That was ridiculous that they were able to do this, but he inputted a line that had NASA log file, and they put in a fake log to see if the file would be picked up by the AI and see if the AI would be able to understand, like, hey, what is not the HTTP request or whatever, right? What's different about this? One of these things are not like the other. What is that? And that's important. That's the needle in the haystack experiment they was talking about. That was the what was that? That was the benchmark they were talking about earlier and how important it was. And they use this example, and like I do like AI and ChatGPT and OpenAI, of course, but I think for a lot of users, and granted, this is a developer API stream, and there's going to be a lot of developers here. But what I- they didn't, this is not a real world example. It is, but I think it's not what I would call like a sexy example. Like a lot of people are like, bro, NASA 95 over, what is this man talking about? Shit, I'm just like, what is this guy talking about? They be making us nerds and geeks and freaking developers seem so geeky and nerdy. It doesn't have to be like all that. But anyway, a better example would have been looking at financial data, cleaning up Excel files. Think about this, man. You know how much people try to use Excel files, try to use different type of information, public information, but the information is like bad data, right? Let's say you're trying to get a customer list, right? But they had duplicate customers, and you don't want to be double texting people because they have their name put down 2 or 3 times. You can ask ChatGPT, "Hey, what are the duplicates? Erase them for sales, even for finances and stuff like that." You can like try to make sure all the numbers are currencies, right? Make sure the decimals are a certain type of decimal place. And in a file that I think was like what 8,000 lines. It was on like the 8,000 lines, and they found them. I found that change. It took some time, but it would take a longer time for you to find it if you would find it. Let's be honest. That thing would not be found. That thing would not be found if it was a normal person. Let's be real. So that's important. But for financial data, you could make sure it has good cleaning up ability to figure out what's going faster, as well as when it comes to developing in IDEs and stuff like that. If you had this integrated into your IDE, which Windsurf, I guess, is kind of like that. If you're making mistakes in a huge file, if you ever like had like a VS Code instance that was like thousands of lines of code, sometimes VS Code, some of these IDEs do get a little weird when you get past that 1,000 line of code, right? So this could also help it out to be like, hey, like instead of it just being which one is not an HTTP request, which line is not JavaScript, which line is not Python, really? You know what I'm saying? So I think these are also like good questions to ask people, and how this would be real world examples. But these APIs are pretty strong. That's a good needle in the haystack experiment. We got the security out the way. We know what Quasar is now. Like this is really a good presentation. Sam Altman wasn't there, so I'm always kind of feel if Sam Altman isn't there, then who knows? Let's go back to the pricing though. Sorry, I've been yapping, but that's why I'm live streaming, right? If I was just not yapping, like, come on, y'all would be like, bro, I'm just gonna sit here and watch these people talk and just leave. Let's talk about this pricing. This pricing is pretty good. Input is 10 cents. Cash input is 0.025, and output is like 40 cents. That's good, man. That's for the nano, but like in the output, you see with the 4.1 mini thing, and the output price for the 4.1 is $8. Uh, the max tokens are 32K, but the context length is 1 million. So like if you give it 1 million, it's not giving you 1 million back. Basically, if you give it a novel, a whole book, it's not giving you a novel. So if you gave it a book and you wanted to write another book, it's going to be like a part one. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not gonna give you the whole thing back. So if you want to use this, like that. It's not going to be like that. But I think this is still pretty good of a I think this is still pretty good of a presentation. To be honest with you, this is pretty good. I think the Nano version is comparable to Gamma or Gemma, which is Gemini's small version. Uh, but they didn't really talk. They said it's faster than ChatGPT 4.0, which is good. But I'm not sure how small is Nano because Gemma can run on like your smartphone potentially, can run on like laptops potentially. So how small is small? Because if you think of it like a Llama 4, their smallest model is still 2 months. Their smallest Llama 4 model was still like enormous, even though they was like, oh, it could run on an H100. My guy, who's out here sitting on a whole bunch of H100s? Really, not me. I got an H0, boy. This, but it is 50% faster. Uh, with the 4.1 nano. The other ones are similar to. Hold on, I got the closed caption on. Okay, Mini is 40% faster, and 4.1 is similar to ChatGPT 4. Oh, as far as latency, maybe because it's the bigger models. Text in, image out, text out. So you can get text in and images. And I think they also was talking about videos. So I'm guessing I'm not sure if they break the videos up by the frames because videos are basically pictures that you flip through. But this is actually pretty good. And I think this is going head to head with like a DeepSeek with these models and beating it and probably everything. Because if you look at DeepSeek's pricing versus 4.1 Nano's pricing, I'm gonna look it up. DeepSeek price. DeepSeek pricing. Let me down. Where is it at? I think Nano is comparable to DeepSeek. Let me see. Yeah. So input for DeepSeek R1 is 55 cents. Output is $2.02. So this is cheaper than DeepSeek, y'all. So that's actually crazy. I mean, it's still not open source. It's not like we can use this, look through his code and everything. So we're not like winning on that front. But it is still pretty good because I think R1 was or V3 was like really like neck and neck with ChatGPT. We just had Gemini 2.5 Pro, which is pretty good, but this is good price. This is really good pricing. What else are you talking about, chat?
Details.
Action we see quite
Yeah, we had that. The prompting stuff. We already talked about the prompting stuff and how that's great. What else? What else, chat? Oh, the coding. We need to talk about the coding. Man, I don't even know what to say about coding. I feel like first, as a developer, I do like it. It definitely comes in handy. But I'm also gonna like, give them some slack. I'm like gonna be like, it's good, but how good is good really? Because ChatGPT, they spit out some code. It was like, oh, it's like 400, 500 lines of code for like the flashcard app that this person did. Let me go back to the flashcard. Yeah, so she made a flashcard app, right? They copped out. If this model is so good, and they're like, oh, one shot. They were like, oh yeah, it generated all this code, and we're just gonna show you, bro. That is like, listen, y'all had this open. I know the trick. I know the trick. You had this open already, and you just it's like sent it up to the server. I'm not saying AI can't one shot stuff, but y'all had some code already sitting there. That seemed kind of that seemed kind of weird to me. Hold on, because they was giving us all kinds of freaking like benchmarks. My Look at this, all these benchmarks. Hold on, where is the
Powered by GPT 4.1.
Yeah,
Here we
it's
go.
kind of neat.
It's pretty cool.
So let's.
Be sassy, but I think it's working.
I do like that it.
Has to be further back. But anyway,
Coding benchmarks. For the,
I'm not sure how good the coding is because I think it's hard to do a live coding
stuff
example
from
because you can hope and pray that this is one shot and that it does become a app live, which is the best thing I think an AI company could hope for. But if it doesn't one shot it, it's gonna look bad. I feel like the downside is much worse. If it one shots it, great. It looks good on stream. But if it doesn't one shot it, is that gonna be new standard to be like we're gonna have one shot flash card apps, one shot video game apps? I mean, that'd be a great benchmark for us personally as consumers, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so they had this, but I think I didn't like that they popped out where they just had the code kind of already up. So
Hindi.
yeah, working.
so the prompt was make a flashcard web application. The user should be able to create a flashcard, search through the entire existing flashcards, review flashcards, and see statistics on flashcards. Reviewed preload 10 cards containing a Hindi word or phrase in its English translation and review inference. In the review inference, clicking or pressing space should flip the card with a smooth 3D animation to reveal the translation. Pressing the arrow key should navigate through cards. Search interface. The search bar should dynamically provide a list of results as the user types in a query. Statistics interface. The stats application show a graph of the number of the cards the user has reviewed and the percentage that they have gotten correct. Trait cards inference. The trait card page should allow the users to specify the front and back of the flashcard and add the user's collection. Add to the user's collection. Each of the interfaces should be accessible in the sidebar. Generate a single page React app. Put all styles in line. Okay, which it did do really good.
On it.
I would say so.
App, and when I give this prompt to GPT-4o, this is what I get. It follows some of the instructions and some of the app is functional, but we really trained GPT 4.1 to do better. And that model, you can see it looks way better. It's discovered colors. It can also do the 3D animation. So we think you're really going to like this improvement to front-end coding.
And this was just based on that prompt that you gave it.
Just one prompt, and you get
Pretty cool because the small touches really is what makes them, let's be honest. As a developer, this is what really makes like the touches. This is what wows the clients when it's like, oh, it's reactive. It's responsive. It's it's alive basically. But I think that was pretty cool. 'Cause even how they had like the colors of it and it had like incorrect red, green,
like
and
this.
everything. And this was made in React. Even though I think the benchmark they had was on Python, this is React. This is pretty good. It's pretty good. If you do ask me. What I just did not like was that this is so great. This is supposed to be like, oh, it's, 'cause they spit out all this code. Because what happens is non-developer people do not understand this. They're like, Brody, what is this? It spit out all this, and we just vibe coding. It's like it does not work like that. What happens? What happens is people think that it's just magic in a box. But when you actually vibe code with it, it's like a lot of errors. It's a lot of issues. It's a lot of headaches. So if you're just vibe coding with ChatGPT 4.1, this flashcard app, I'm pretty sure this thing got tweaked a little bit. But they say it didn't, so we gotta take their word for that. Like it just spit this all out, and it's like, right? Who knows? Like who knows? Like what really happens? But yeah, tell me what y'all think about this. I'm probably about to wrap it up because it is an improvement. I don't want to hate too much. It is an improvement to ChatGPT, especially 4.0 because well with 4.0, even though this is pretty good, it doesn't have that flair. You know what I'm saying? That je ne sais quoi, right? About it, where it didn't have like the correct, incorrect. Look at that. Look at the colors. Correct, check mark, incorrect, X. Even look at the how the boxes like the progress status. It's like kind of blurred out. That these are some nice touches, you know what I'm saying? And would really take some time to do as a developer. I'm definitely more like a functionality type of person. Like, get it to work. The bells and whistles don't even like it matters. But if it works, that's like the battle. That's like functionality is more than half the battle. I'm not on some GI Joe like, oh yes, no one's no. Let it work first. So that's the only kind of gripe I had about this presentation. Also, what I thought I was going to be looking for is that I was going to be looking for image generation coming to the API because what's been happening a lot of times there's been trends going on and people are using this image generator to they bibliify themselves. People have been turning themselves into action figures. So it'd have been pretty cool to have the access to the API image generator access because I can see myself doing some apps. If you would want me to do like an app with the ChatGPT OpenAI as like image generator, let me know. I could even like maybe set that up once it becomes available, of course. But this is all pretty good to say the least. That GPT OpenAI is really good. I think this is going to really be a big competitor in this space, especially since Gemini 2.5 Pro came out and they just did their keynote. I will be doing more as far as live streams, and I'll be doing more reactions to some of this type of stuff. So if you want to drop down below things y'all want me to react to, maybe some live streams, maybe I can vibe code with y'all using Gemini 2.5 Pro or ChatGPT 4.1 to see how it works out. And the deprecation of 4.5 is kind of weird, but it's still costly. It sucks at coding. So I understand why they're getting rid of it, me personally. But don't forget to like and subscribe. Hope y'all, use this. Tell me how it is. Come back. That being said, your boy Dexter is out.